I stood on my front lawn in Asheville, North Carolina, staring at the certified letter from the Riverside Hills Homeowners Association, feeling my blood pressure rise with every word I read. According to Patricia Henderson, the HOA president, my property was single-handedly destroying neighborhood property values, and I had exactly 30 days to remedy the eyesore or face daily fines of $500. My name is Nathan Vance, and I had bought this 1920s craftsman bungalow 6 months ago precisely because I loved restoration projects, not because I wanted to fight with some power-hungry middle-aged woman who thought beige vinyl siding was the height of architectural achievement. The house had good bones, incredible bones actually, but the previous owner had let it deteriorate for years. Peeling paint, sagging porch, overgrown yard, cracked windows, the whole 9 yards. I had paid $200,000 for it, which was a steal in this market, specifically because I knew I could bring it back to life. I was a general contractor by trade, had been for 15 years, and I specialized in historic renovations. This was supposed to be my passion project, my own home that I could take my time with and do right. I crumpled the letter and walked back inside, my work boots echoing on the original hardwood floors that I had already spent 3 weekends refinishing. The kitchen was gutted, mid-renovation, with new cabinets waiting to be installed and the vintage subway tile I had sourced from a demolition company in Raleigh sitting in boxes. I had plans, detailed plans, and a budget of about $80,000 to transform this place into something spectacular. But apparently, Patricia Henderson did not care about my plans. My phone rang. It was my buddy Marcus, who lived 2 streets over in the same neighborhood. "Did you get a letter from the HOA?" he asked without preamble. "Yeah, just now. Apparently my house is a blight on humanity." "Welcome to the club, man. Patricia sent me one last month because my mailbox was the wrong shade of black. Not kidding. Wrong shade. I had to repaint it 3 times before she approved it." I leaned against my kitchen counter, surveying the demolition around me. "This is insane. I bought this place to fix it up. That is literally what I am doing. You do not understand how the HOA works here. Patricia has been president for 8 years. She runs this neighborhood like a dictatorship. Everything has to go through the Architectural Review Committee, which is just her and her 2 friends, Deborah and Susan. They reject anything that is not boring and suburban. The house was like this when I bought it. Did she send letters to the previous owner, old Mr. Garrison? He was here for 40 years. I think she tried, but he just ignored her. He was in his 80s and did not care. But you are new blood, and she thinks she can push you around." I rubbed my temples. I need to go to an HOA meeting. Next one is Thursday night, 7 p.m. at the community center. Bring patience and maybe some whiskey. Thursday evening, I put on actual clean clothes instead of my usual paint-splattered work gear and drove to the Riverside Hills Community Center. The building was exactly what I expected. Bland beige, with flourishing landscape lighting that probably cost more than it should have. Inside, about 20 residents sat in folding chairs facing a table where Patricia Henderson held court with Deborah Marsh, and Susan Klein flanking her like sentries. Patricia was probably 55, with that aggressive blonde hairstyle that required speaking to managers, and she wore a cream-colored pantsuit that screamed suburban authority. She looked up as I entered, and her eyes narrowed immediately. "Mr. Vance, how nice of you to join us," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I figured I should, given the letter you sent me. We will get to that during new business. Please take a seat." The meeting was excruciating. They spent 20 minutes discussing whether the neighborhood entrance sign needed new flowers. then another 15 debating if the pool hours should be adjusted by 15 minutes. I watched residents who tried to speak get cut off by Patricia, who controlled the conversation like a conductor with an iron baton. Finally, she reached my item on the agenda. Now, we come to the matter of 428 Maple Drive, owned by Mr. Nathan Vance. As you all know, this property has been in a state of disrepair for years, and unfortunately, the new owner has not taken steps to remedy the situation. The Architectural Review Committee has determined that this property is in violation of Section 7.3 of our covenants, conditions, and restrictions, which states that all properties must be maintained in a manner that preserves and enhances neighborhood property values. I raised my hand. "Can I respond to that?" Patricia sighed dramatically. "You have 2 minutes." I stood, turning to face the other residents. "I bought the house 6 months ago. I am a licensed general contractor and I specialize in historic home restoration. I have a detailed plan to renovate the property, which includes all new systems, restored original features, and landscaping. This is not a quick flip. This is a proper restoration that will take about a year to complete. The house will be beautiful when I am done." "The issue, Mr. Vance," Patricia interrupted, "is that you have not submitted any plans to the Architectural Review Committee. You cannot just do whatever you want. There are rules." "I was not aware I needed approval to renovate my own home." Deborah leaned forward. "It is in the CCRs that you signed when you purchased the property. Any exterior changes require committee approval." "I have not made any exterior changes yet. I have been working on the interior." Patricia shuffled her papers. "The exterior is still in disrepair. Peeling paint, damaged porch, overgrown landscaping. That affects everyone's property values. And I am going to fix all of that, but I am doing things in the right order. Foundation, systems, interior structure, then exterior. That is how proper renovation works." "We need a timeline," Susan said, "and we need to see your plans." "Fine," I said, keeping my voice level. "I can provide both. When do you meet next?" 2 weeks from today," Patricia said. "Submit your plans in writing by next Friday. We will review them and let you know our decision." I left that meeting knowing this was going to be a fight. Patricia Henderson was not interested in proper renovation or historic preservation. She wanted cookie-cutter suburban conformity, and my craftsman bungalow was never going to fit that mold. Over the next week, I put together a comprehensive presentation. I included architectural drawings, material samples, historical photos of similar homes, a detailed timeline, and even a property value analysis showing that properly restored craftsman homes sold for 30 to 40% more than the neighborhood average. I had done my research. In Asheville's historic neighborhoods, homes like mine were commanding premium prices. Young professionals and retirees wanted character and craftsmanship, not vinyl siding and builder-grade fixtures. I submitted everything on Friday morning, hand-delivering it to Patricia's house. She answered the door in workout clothes, her face already pinched with displeasure. "Mr. Vance, my renovation plans as requested. Everything is in there. Timeline, materials, costs, property value analysis." She took the thick folder without looking at it. "The committee will review it. I think you will find that this renovation is actually going to benefit the entire neighborhood. Properties near restored homes typically see value increases." "We will see," she said and closed the door. 2 weeks later, I returned to the community center for their decision. This time, I brought Marcus for moral support. Patricia wasted no time once the meeting reached my agenda item. "The Architectural Review Committee has reviewed Mr. Vance's proposal for 428 Maple Drive. We have several concerns. First, the proposed exterior color scheme of sage green with white trim and a burgundy front door is not consistent with neighborhood aesthetics. Second, the restoration of the original wood windows rather than replacement with vinyl is not approved. Third, the proposed front porch restoration with tapered columns and stone foundation is too elaborate. Fourth, the landscaping plan includes non-approved plant species. For these reasons, the committee denies the proposal in its current form. I felt my jaw tighten. You are telling me I cannot restore the house to its original 1920s design. You can renovate, Patricia said primly, but it needs to fit with the neighborhood standards. We suggest neutral colors, vinyl replacement windows for energy efficiency, and simpler porch design. We have a list of approved contractors who can help you achieve a more suitable aesthetic. Let me guess, I said. These approved contractors are going to charge me twice as much to make my historic home look like every other house on the street. Mr. Vance, there is no need for hostility. We are simply trying to maintain property values. I stood up. No, you are trying to maintain control. This is a historic home. It deserves to be restored properly, not turned into some suburban nightmare. I am going to do this renovation the right way with or without your approval. Patricia's face flushed. Then you will be fined, Mr. Vance. $500 per day, starting immediately. We will see about that, I said and walked out. The next morning, I called a real estate attorney named Jennifer Brooks who specialized in HOA disputes. Her office was in downtown Asheville, in one of the restored Art Deco buildings that made the city so charming. She was about 40, sharp, and she listened to my story with increasing interest. "Let me see the CCRs," she said. I handed her the covenants, conditions, and restrictions document that had been included in my closing paperwork. I had to admit, I had barely skimmed it when I bought the house. It was 80 pages of dense legal language, and I had been more focused on the inspection report and the house itself. Jennifer read through it quickly, making notes. "Okay, so here is the situation. Yes, you are technically required to get architectural approval for exterior changes. However, there are some interesting things here. First, the CCRs were written in 1985, and there is no provision for historic homes, even though your house predates this subdivision. Second, their denial has to be reasonable and based on legitimate concerns about property values or neighborhood harmony. Third, and this is important, they cannot unreasonably withhold approval. So what does that mean? It means we can challenge this. You have legitimate plans to improve the property. Your renovation will increase property values, not decrease them. And their reasons for denial are aesthetic preferences, not legitimate concerns. We can argue that their denial is arbitrary and capricious. What is the process? First, you file an appeal with the HOA board. If they deny that, which they probably will, we file suit in Superior Court. You will need to continue paying your HOA dues, but do not pay the fines. We will argue those are invalid. How long does this take? Could be 6 months, could be a year. Depends on their attorney and how willing they are to fight. I thought about my timeline, my budget, and my sanity. What if I just start the renovation anyway? They will fine you, and those fines will add up. They can put a lien on your property. Eventually, they could even force a sale to collect. I do not recommend it. But if we win, those fines go away. If we win, the fines are invalidated and they might have to pay your attorney fees. But it is a risk. I made a decision that probably was not smart but felt necessary. Let's file the appeal and start the lawsuit, and I am going to start the renovation. This house has been deteriorating for years. Every month I wait is more damage, more cost. I am not going to let Patricia Henderson destroy my investment because she does not like sage green paint. Jennifer nodded slowly. Okay, but understand what you are getting into. This is going to be expensive and stressful. I restore houses for a living. I am used to expensive and stressful. Over the next 2 months, I threw myself into the renovation while Jennifer handled the legal battle. I started with the exterior because that was what Patricia cared about. I hired a crew to help me, and we began stripping the old paint, repairing damaged wood, and restoring the porch. Every day, I half expected Patricia to show up and yell at me, but instead, she just sent increasingly threatening letters about the mounting fines. The house started to transform. We repaired the foundation, replaced rotted sills, and restored the original wood siding. I found a craftsman who could replicate the missing porch brackets, and we rebuilt the tapered columns exactly as they had been in 1922. The sage green paint I had chosen was historically accurate for craftsman homes, and it made the house glow. The white trim popped, and the burgundy door became a focal point that drew your eye. Marcus came by almost every weekend to watch the progress. Man, this is looking incredible. Thanks. I just hope the judge thinks so too. Have you gotten more letters from Patricia? Oh yeah, I am apparently up to $45,000 in fines now. She is also threatening to sue me personally. That is insane. That is Patricia. The windows were next. I had found a company that specialized in restoring historic windows, and they carefully removed each one, rebuilt the frames, replaced the glass, and added modern weather stripping that was invisible. The result was windows that looked original but performed almost as well as new ones. They were not vinyl, they were not replacement windows, they were the real deal. As I worked, I started noticing something interesting. Neighbors began stopping by to watch. At first they were just curious, but then they started asking questions. An older couple from down the street, Helen and George Morrison, came by one Saturday morning. "This is beautiful work," Helen said, running her hand along the newly restored porch railing. "Our house is from the same era. Do you think it could look like this?" "Absolutely." "You have a craftsman too, right? The one with the stone foundation?" "Yes, but it has vinyl siding now. The previous owners put it up in the 90s. I winced. Vinyl siding over original wood was one of my pet peeves. You could remove that and restore what is underneath. It would be worth it. George shook his head. Patricia would never approve it. Well, that is why I am fighting her. These houses are too special to be covered up and homogenized. They left thoughtful, and I wondered if I was starting to plant seeds. By month 4, the exterior was nearly complete. The house looked like it had been transported from 1922, but better. The craftsmanship was evident in every detail, from the custom brackets to the restored river rock foundation to the period-appropriate lighting fixtures. I had sourced everything carefully, choosing quality over speed, and it showed. That is when Patricia showed up. I was on the porch, installing the vintage mailbox I had found at an antique store when her white Lexus pulled up. She got out, her face already red with anger, and marched up my front walk. "What do you think you are doing?" she demanded. "Installing a mailbox. It is a beauty, is not it? Solid brass from 1925. You are in violation of every rule we have. This color, these windows, this porch, none of it is approved." "I disagree. I think it is all approved by common sense and good taste." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you are clever, do not you? You think you can just ignore the rules because you know about old houses. I think I can restore my own property in a way that is appropriate and beneficial, and I think you are on a power trip. I have been president of this HOA for 8 years. I have kept this neighborhood safe and our property values stable. Then you come in with your arrogance and your historic this and craftsman that, thinking you are better than everyone else. I do not think I am better than anyone. I just think this house deserves better than vinyl siding and beige paint. You are going to lose in court. My attorney says your case is frivolous. And when you lose, you are going to owe over $100,000 in fines, plus our legal fees. We will see, I said, turning back to my mailbox. She stood there for another moment, vibrating with fury, then stomped back to her car and drove away with a screech of tires. That evening, Jennifer called. We have a court date, 3 months from now. Judge Harrison Coleman. He is fair, has a good reputation. This is good for us. What do I need to do? Keep documenting everything. Take photos, keep receipts, get statements from neighbors if anyone supports you. We need to prove that your renovation is improving the neighborhood, not harming it. I can do that. The next weekend, I focused on the landscaping. The yard had been a mess of weeds and overgrown shrubs. I ripped everything out and started from scratch, designing a cottage garden that was appropriate for a 1920s home. Native plants, hydrangeas, hostas, a stone pathway, a small fountain. I worked dawn to dusk, and by Sunday evening the front yard looked like something from a magazine. Monday morning I had visitors. Helen and George Morrison were back, but this time they brought 2 other neighbors, Linda Patterson and Robert Chen. Nathan, Helen said, we have been talking. What you are doing here is remarkable. The house looks better than it has in 50 years. Thank you. Robert stepped forward. I am a real estate agent. I work mostly in this area and I have been watching your renovation with professional interest. Do you mind if I ask what you have spent so far? About $60,000, including materials and the help I have hired for specialized work. He nodded, pulling out his phone. I ran some comps this morning. Houses in this neighborhood typically sell for about $250,000 to $270,000, depending on condition and updates. Based on what you have done, I would list your house for at least $320,000, probably more. Maybe $350,000 once you finish the interior. I blinked. Really? There is huge demand for historic homes that have been properly restored. Young buyers especially want character and quality. What you are creating here is exactly what the market wants. Linda spoke up. Our house is 3 doors down. We are thinking about selling in a year or 2. If your house sells for that much, it raises the comps for the whole street. That is the idea, I said. Proper restoration benefits everyone. Helen smiled. We would like to write statements supporting you. For your court case, if that helps. That would help tremendously. Over the next few weeks, I collected statements from 8 different neighbors, all saying that my renovation was improving the neighborhood and they supported my work. Robert Chen even prepared a formal property value analysis showing that restored historic homes created a halo effect, raising values for surrounding properties by an average of 15 to 20%. Patricia did not take this well. She sent a mass email to the entire neighborhood, warning that I was a troublemaker who was breaking the rules and putting everyone's property values at risk. She claimed that my non-conforming renovation would make the neighborhood look cluttered and inconsistent, driving away potential buyers who wanted a neat, uniform aesthetic. The email backfired. Within hours, I received messages from a dozen residents expressing support for my work. Several said they were tired of Patricia's controlling behavior and appreciated seeing someone stand up to her. 2 people even mentioned that they were considering similar renovations for their own homes if I won in court. Marcus forwarded me an email chain that Patricia had sent to Deborah and Susan, not realizing she had hit reply all. In it, She ranted about how I was undermining her authority and turning the neighborhood against her. She called me several unflattering names and said she was going to make sure I was financially ruined by the fines and legal fees. I forwarded it to Jennifer, who was delighted. This shows her motivation is not about property values. It is about control and retaliation. This is great for our case. By month 6, the exterior was completely done. The house was stunning, a perfect example of craftsman architecture restored to its full glory. I had even added historically appropriate garage doors that I had custom-made to match the style of the house. The landscaping had filled in beautifully, and the whole property looked like it belonged in a historic district. I started getting inquiries from strangers. People would slow down as they drove past, then park and come ask questions. A local blogger who focused on Asheville architecture asked if she could feature the house. A regional magazine wanted to do a story. I said yes to everything, figuring the publicity could only help my case. The interior renovation continued at the same meticulous pace. I had restored the original hardwood floors throughout, revealing beautiful oak that had been hidden under carpet for decades. The kitchen was now a showpiece, with custom cabinetry that looked period appropriate, but included modern conveniences like soft, close drawers and pull-out organizers. The vintage subway tile gleamed on the walls, and I had found a vintage stove that I had fully restored and modernized. The bathrooms were next. The original bathroom had been tiny and outdated, so I had expanded into an adjacent closet to create something more functional while maintaining the craftsman aesthetic. Hexagonal tile floors, pedestal sink, clawfoot tub, subway tile halfway up the walls. I added a second bathroom upstairs using the same design language, making the house much more livable for modern standards. Throughout all of this, the fines kept mounting. According to Patricia's letters, I now owed over $90,000. Jennifer assured me not to worry, that we were going to invalidate all of it, but it was still stressful seeing those numbers. 2 weeks before the court date, something unexpected happened. I was working on installing the final light fixtures when a black Mercedes pulled up. A man in an expensive suit got out and approached with a confident stride. "Nathan Vance. That is me. I am David Rutherford. I represent a development company called Asheville Heritage Properties. We acquire and restore historic homes throughout the region. I have been watching your work and I am very impressed. Thank you. I would like to make you an offer. We will purchase your home for $400,000, cash, closing in 30 days. We will also pay all your outstanding HOA fines and legal fees." I stared at him. $400,000 was almost double what I had paid. With my renovation costs, I would walk away with a profit of about $140,000 for 6 months of work. "Why would you pay that much?" he smiled. "Because you have done exactly what we do and you have done it well. This house is a showcase for what is possible in this neighborhood. We would use it as a model home to show other owners what we can do. Plus, we think your court case is going to set a precedent that makes it easier for us to work in HOA-controlled neighborhoods. We want to support that. I appreciate the offer, but I am not interested in selling. This is my home. $450,000. I shook my head. It is not about the money. I bought this house because I love it. I have put my heart into this renovation. I am not flipping it for profit. I am staying. He handed me a business card. "If you change your mind, call me. The offer stands." After he left, I sat on my porch for a long time thinking. $450,000 was life-changing money. I could pay off all my debts, buy another property, start completely fresh. But every time I thought about walking away, I looked at the house and felt something in my chest tighten. This was not just a project. This was my home, the place I had imagined building a life. I was not leaving. The court date arrived on a cold November morning. Jennifer had prepared thoroughly, and we had boxes of evidence. Photographs, receipts, property value analyses, neighbor statements, architectural drawings, historical documentation. We even had expert witnesses lined up, including a historic preservation specialist from the University of North Carolina and a real estate appraiser. Patricia arrived with her attorney, a sharp-looking man named Gregory Walsh, who represented a lot of HOAs in the area. They looked confident, which worried me. Judge Coleman was a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. He listened as Walsh presented the HOA's case first. Your Honor, this case is straightforward. Mr. Vance purchased a property in a neighborhood governed by clear covenants, conditions, and restrictions. These CCRs require architectural approval for any exterior changes. Mr. Vance submitted plans. Those plans were denied for legitimate reasons, and he proceeded anyway in flagrant violation of the rules. The HOA is simply asking that he be required to comply with the same rules everyone else follows, and that he pay the fines that have accrued due to his continued violations. Walsh presented the CCRs, the denial letter, and the mounting fine notices. It looked bad for me, I had to admit. Then Jennifer stood up. Your Honor, this case is about whether an HOA can unreasonably deny improvements to a property based solely on aesthetic preferences that actually harm property values. Mr. Vance is a licensed general contractor specializing in historic restoration. He purchased a deteriorating 1920s craftsman home and has meticulously restored it, using period-appropriate materials and techniques. The result is not only beautiful, but has significantly increased the property's value, and by extension, the values of surrounding properties. She presented the before and after photos, and I watched Judge Coleman's eyebrows rise. The transformation was dramatic. The house had gone from an eyesore to a showpiece. Furthermore, Jennifer continued, we have statements from multiple neighbors supporting Mr. Vance's renovation and expressing that it has improved the neighborhood. We have a professional property value analysis showing that Mr. Vance's home is now worth approximately $170,000 more than when he purchased it, and that comparable sales for surrounding properties have increased by an average of 18% since his renovation became visible. Walsh stood up. Your Honor, property values are speculative. The HOA's concern is about long-term consistency and neighborhood harmony. If every homeowner is allowed to do whatever they want, the neighborhood will become cluttered and mismatched. Judge Coleman looked at the photos again. Mr. Walsh, looking at these images, do you believe Mr. Vance's home is cluttered or mismatched with the neighborhood's character? Walsh hesitated. It is different, Your Honor. It does not match the prevailing aesthetic. The prevailing aesthetic appears to be vinyl siding and builder-grade materials. Mr. Vance's home appears to be high-quality craftsmanship and period-appropriate restoration. Can you explain how the latter harms property values compared to the former? The CCRs give the Architectural Review Committee discretion to deny projects that do not fit their vision for the neighborhood. Judge Coleman leaned back. Discretion is not unlimited, Mr. Walsh. It has to be reasonable. I have been looking at these CCRs during your presentations, and I see nothing that specifically prohibits historic restoration or requires vinyl siding. I see general language about maintaining property values and neighborhood harmony. Based on the evidence presented, Mr. Vance's renovation appears to enhance both. He looked at Patricia, who was sitting ramrod straight beside Walsh. Mrs. Henderson, Can you explain specifically what harm has been caused by Mr. Vance's renovation? Patricia stood, her voice tight. Your Honor, it sets a precedent. If we allow him to do whatever he wants, other homeowners will think they can ignore our rules too. What rules is he ignoring? Be specific. The color scheme was not approved. The windows were not approved. The porch design was not approved. And why were they not approved? Patricia's face reddened. Because they do not match the neighborhood standard. What is the neighborhood standard? Neutral colors, energy-efficient vinyl windows, simple designs. Judge Coleman made a note. And is there anything in the CCRs that specifically requires neutral colors, vinyl windows, or simple designs? Walsh interjected. Your Honor, the Architectural Review Committee has broad discretion. I understand that, Mr. Walsh, but discretion must be exercised reasonably. From what I am seeing, the committee denied Mr. Vance's plans based on personal aesthetic preferences, not based on any objective standard in the CCRs. Furthermore, the evidence suggests that his renovation has actually increased property values, not decreased them. The hearing continued for another 2 hours. Our expert witnesses testified about the value of historic preservation, the market demand for restored homes, and the positive impact on surrounding properties. Walsh tried to argue that we could not prove causation, that the property value increases might be due to general market trends, but our appraiser had controlled for that with extensive comparative data. Finally, Judge Coleman called for a recess to review everything. We waited in the hallway for 90 minutes, and I felt every minute of it. When we returned, Judge Coleman had made his decision. Having reviewed all the evidence and testimony, I find in favor of the plaintiff, Nathan Vance. The HOA's denial of his renovation plans was arbitrary and capricious, not based on reasonable standards or objective criteria in the governing documents. Mr. Vance's renovation has been conducted professionally and has demonstrably increased property values, both for his own home and for surrounding properties. The Architectural Review Committee exceeded its authority by attempting to enforce aesthetic preferences that are not supported by the CCRs. He looked at Patricia, whose face had gone from red to pale. Furthermore, I find that the fines imposed on Mr. Vance were invalid and are hereby vacated. The HOA is ordered to cease all collection efforts immediately. Additionally, under North Carolina law regarding frivolous HOA enforcement, the HOA is ordered to pay Mr. Vance's reasonable attorney fees and costs. Jennifer squeezed my arm. We had won, but Judge Coleman was not done. I want to be clear about something. HOAs serve an important function in maintaining neighborhoods and property values. However, that authority is not unlimited. Architectural review committees must base their decisions on reasonable standards that actually serve the stated purposes of the CCRs. They cannot simply impose personal preferences or maintain control for its own sake. This case is an example of an HOA losing sight of its actual mission. We left the courthouse victorious. Jennifer was ecstatic, and I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. No fines, no liens, and the HOA had to pay my legal fees, which had been substantial. Patricia avoided looking at me as she left with Walsh. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The story hit the local news that evening. Homeowner wins historic renovation battle against HOA was the headline, and they showed footage of my house alongside an interview with Jennifer explaining the case's significance. The story went viral locally, then regionally. Within a week, I was getting calls from homeowners across North Carolina who were in similar battles with their HOAs, but the real impact came from my own neighborhood. Within 2 weeks of the court decision, 3 neighbors contacted me about doing similar restorations on their homes. Helen and George Morrison hired me to remove their vinyl siding and restore their craftsman home. Linda Patterson wanted to restore her 1915 bungalow. Robert Chen bought a fixer-upper 2 streets over specifically to renovate it. A movement had started. Patricia called an emergency HOA meeting a month after the court decision. I attended, along with about 40 other residents, the most I had ever seen at one of these meetings. Patricia looked diminished somehow, her usual aggressive confidence replaced with something more defensive. As you know, we recently lost a court case regarding architectural standards. I want to assure everyone that the board is still committed to maintaining property values and neighborhood harmony. Marcus stood up. Patricia, I think we need to talk about the board itself. You have been president for 8 years. Maybe it is time for new leadership. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Patricia's face tightened. There is an election process. If people want to run against me, they are welcome to do so. I nominate Nathan Vance for president, Helen Morrison said loudly. I jerked my head toward her. What? No, I do not want to be HOA president. I second the nomination, George added. I do not want this job, I protested. Robert Chen stood. Nathan, you have shown us what is possible when someone stands up for what is right. This neighborhood needs leadership that understands the value of what we have here. These are special homes and they deserve to be treated that way. A vote was called. Patricia did not even run. She resigned on the spot, gathering her things and walking out while Deborah and Susan watched in shock. I was elected HOA president with 36 votes out of 40 residents present. I spent the next 6 months completely overhauling how the HOA operated. We rewrote the architectural review standards to focus on quality and appropriateness rather than conformity. We created separate guidelines for historic homes versus newer construction. We reduced the board from 3 people to 5, adding more diverse voices. We cut the annual dues by 20% by eliminating wasteful spending on things like expensive landscape lighting and focusing on essential services. Most importantly, we started actively encouraging restoration and quality improvement rather than fighting it. The change in the neighborhood was remarkable. Over the next year, 11 homes underwent significant renovations. Not all of them were historic restorations like mine, but all of them focused on quality and character. The vinyl siding started coming down, revealing the original homes underneath. Front porches were restored. Gardens were planted. The neighborhood started to look like a real community rather than a cookie-cutter subdivision, and the property values responded exactly as I had predicted. Robert Chen tracked the data meticulously. In the 18 months following my court victory, average home values in Riverside Hills increased by 22%, significantly outpacing the surrounding areas, which averaged about 8% growth. My house, which I had bought for $200,000 and put $80,000 into, was appraised at $460,000. I had proven my point. Quality restoration raises values. Character matters. Fighting for what is right is worth it. I finished my own renovation 14 months after buying the house. The interior was just as spectacular as the exterior. Restored hardwoods, custom tile work, period-appropriate fixtures combined with modern conveniences. I had even finished the basement, creating a workshop for myself and a media room. The house was everything I had dreamed it could be. On a Saturday afternoon in May, I hosted a neighborhood barbecue. 30 families showed up, filling my restored backyard with laughter and conversation. Helen and George brought photos of their ongoing restoration. Linda showed me paint samples for her living room. Marcus introduced me to his daughter, who was studying architecture at NC State and was fascinated by what was happening in our neighborhood. Robert Chen pulled me aside as the sun was setting. I ran the final numbers. Your renovation and the movement it started has added approximately $5.8 million in total property value to this neighborhood. 22% average increase across 73 homes. You were right. I looked around at my neighbors, at the beautiful homes, at the community that had formed. It was never really about the numbers, though. I know. But it is nice when doing the right thing also makes financial sense. Patricia Henderson had moved away 3 months after resigning. I heard she bought a condo in a different part of town, somewhere without an HOA. I wondered if she had learned anything from the experience, if she understood that trying to control everything had ultimately cost her everything. I doubted it, but maybe I was wrong. As people started to leave that evening, Helen Morrison hugged me. "Thank you for not giving up. You changed this neighborhood for the better. We all did it together." "No," she said firmly. "You stood up first. You took the risk. You showed us it was possible. That matters." Later, sitting on my restored front porch with a beer, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, I thought about the journey. 6 months of backbreaking work, 6 months of legal stress, and 18 months of community building. It had been exhausting and expensive and frustrating. But looking at my house, at my neighborhood, at what we had all created together, I knew it had been worth every moment. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jennifer Brooks, my attorney. "Just saw the news story about your neighborhood's transformation. Congratulations on everything. You have set a precedent that is helping homeowners across the state. That is a real legacy." I smiled and typed back a thank you. Then I set the phone down and just sat, enjoying the evening, enjoying my home, enjoying the peace that comes from fighting for something that matters and winning. The house creaked slightly, the old wood settling, and it felt like a greeting from a building that had been waiting 100 years for someone to love it properly. I had given it that love, that care, that respect for its history and character. And in return, it had given me not just a home, but a purpose, a community, and proof that sometimes standing up to people like Patricia Henderson is not just right, it is necessary. 3 months later, I was contacted by a documentary filmmaker from Charlotte who wanted to make a short film about the neighborhood's transformation. I agreed, and the resulting 20-minute documentary, titled Restoration: How One Homeowner Changed a Neighborhood, premiered at the Asheville Film Festival and won an Audience Choice Award. It showed the before and after of multiple homes, interviewed neighbors about the changes, and featured a segment with Judge Coleman discussing the legal implications of the case. The publicity brought even more positive attention. A national architecture magazine featured Riverside Hills in an article about grassroots historic preservation. A book about successful neighborhood revitalization included a chapter about us. I was invited to speak at a historic preservation conference in Raleigh, where I talked about the intersection of individual property rights, community standards, and the value of authenticity. But the best part was not the recognition or the publicity. It was living in a neighborhood that felt alive and authentic, where people took pride in their homes, where front porches were used and neighbors knew each other, where the architecture told a story about craftsmanship and care. One evening, about 2 years after I had first bought the house, I was working in my garden when a young couple walked by, slowing down to look at the house. "This is the one," the woman said excitedly. "This is the house from the article." I stood up, brushing dirt from my knees. "Can I help you?" "We are looking to buy in this neighborhood," the man said. "We read about what is happening here, the renovations, the community. This is exactly what we want." "There is a house for sale 2 streets over," I offered. "It is a 1918 craftsman, needs work, but great bones." Their eyes lit up. "Can you tell us about it?" I spent 20 minutes talking with them about the house, the neighborhood, the HOA's new approach, and the community of people committed to preservation and quality. When they left, they were already calling their real estate agent to schedule a viewing. That is when I knew we had really succeeded. We had not just changed the physical neighborhood. We had changed its identity, its appeal, its future. Riverside Hills was no longer a place where conformity was enforced and character was suppressed. It was a place where history was honored, where craftsmanship was valued, where people could express their creativity while still being part of a cohesive community. The young couple ended up buying that house. They were both designers, and they hired me to consult on their renovation. Within 6 months, they had transformed it into another showcase, and the cycle continued. Each restored home inspired another, each success built momentum, each new resident brought fresh energy and ideas. Patricia Henderson's attempt to lower my property value by forcing conformity had backfired spectacularly. Instead of my house bringing down the neighborhood, my renovation had lifted the entire area. 22% increase in average property values, plus all the intangible benefits of a stronger community, more beautiful streetscapes, and renewed pride in our historic homes. I sometimes thought about that first HOA meeting, when Patricia had been so confident in her authority, so certain that she could force me to comply with her vision of suburban uniformity. She had not understood that some things are worth fighting for, that quality and authenticity have real value, that trying to control everything often means losing everything. As the 3rd year in my home began, I was re-elected as HOA president, running unopposed. The neighborhood had become a model for how HOAs could support property owners rather than restrict them, how historic preservation could coexist with modern living, how community standards could elevate rather than suppress individual expression. I stood on my front porch one evening, the same porch where Patricia Henderson had confronted me with such anger years before, and I looked at the neighborhood I had helped transform. Lights glowed warmly in restored craftsman windows up and down the street. A neighbor waved from their own restored porch. Children played in a yard where native plants and cottage gardens had replaced generic foundation shrubs. This was what home was supposed to be. Not perfect, not uniform, not controlled, but real and alive and full of character. My renovation had not just raised property values by 20%. It had raised the quality of life for everyone who chose to be part of this community. And that was worth more than any dollar amount Patricia Henderson or anyone else could calculate. The house behind me creaked again, and I patted the restored craftsman column affectionately. We had done good work here, this house and I. We had proven that standing up for what matters, fighting for quality and authenticity, and refusing to let small-minded people dictate your vision could lead to something extraordinary, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. And that, I thought as the evening settled into night, was the best kind of victory,